Up next, Take Two Reviews, starring Jake Pyer and Paul Malone. Welcome to Take Two Reviews. I'm Jake Pyer.
And I'm Paul Malone, and we have a special guest here with us today.
Adam Passenger.
Today we're reviewing Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. We're told that this is actually your favorite movie.
It is. It is my favorite movie of all time. I think that it just has something that everybody loves, you know, whether it's funny things or romantic things or action thing.
It's very speedy, this movie, too. Like, the way they write the movie, it's very, like, they're leaving something, and now you're back to...
There's not a wasted moment.
Doesn't give you
the
a lot
cuts
of
are very
time.
rapid.
Yeah. You know, like, he walks in the closet, comes back out, he's already changed.
Yeah.
Very quick. Yeah, this is great in, like, literally all areas, honestly, for me. Like, it doesn't have, like, a bad, like, shadowed area that, you know, they could have worked better, but this is perfect for, like, an adaptation of Scott Pilgrim, I think, so.
I agree. Unfortunately, I have not read the comic book series.
I don't believe any of us have.
No.
But I have to say, from what I do know and from playing the video game that they came out with, which is a direct adaptation of the comic book, it seems like it's pretty much in line with everything that they were doing. Obviously, it's a different writer, so he took different directions with certain plot elements.
Has to, adapt to the
But yeah,
movie.
like you said, this is a near perfect adaptation of something that I think a lot of people were hoping to see.
It was an interesting choice for Michael Cera to be casted as Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, he's not the first guy that I would look at and pick out of the lineup as like a hero type. But it works almost like conversely so well. You know, he's not a natural hero, but he's a very unnatural hero, and it still works well here.
Yeah, he brings that awkwardness and he like magnifies that to work towards this movie. They like embrace that of his.
There's a lot of big names in this cast too. I mean,
They blew up too.
I was
didn't they?
surprised.
You have Chris Evans. You have
Brie Larson.
Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah.
Kieran Culkin. Just a surprisingly star-studded cast for what seems like just another, fun movie that you'd rent on some given weekend.
Everyone can watch this too. It's not directed towards one audience. It's like everyone could get a kick out of this movie, I think.
Oh yeah, this movie came out when I was like in high school, I think. So I mean, it was like prime time for me to see it. But I mean, even now, I mean, obviously I have a lot of nostalgia for it. But just looking back on it, I'm like, everything about this, every aspect of it feels like it was worked hard for.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it lacks in any given category.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'd say. So we will sleep on this, and we will be right back.
Welcome back. Now we're going to talk about Scott Pilgrim.
Let's dive into it. We got screenplay first. We recently just talked about how it kind of like jumps a lot from scene to scene, the way they, edit that. So it's very fast, the writing is.
With 7 villains in a movie where you don't even know the main character, obviously they had to move pretty quick from scene to scene, but I think they do a good job of keeping enough time on everybody so you kind of know what everybody's about.
Right.
The villains don't really have much depth, but that's kind of the point.
Old video game bosses, they're not particularly well fleshed
Yeah.
out. They're kind of just, we're going to fight now.
Yeah.
Right.
So Gideon is our big bad, and it tends to leave a bad taste in the mouth early on of the big bad, so that we know when they come up again.
Yeah.
And they do kind of tease at him a little bit, but it's toward the end, and then we see him very shortly after. So I think we should have seen him first sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah, he isn't on screen until probably the last third of the movie.
Yeah, or the final act.
And he is mentioned in name before that. But,
G-Man, yeah.
But,
They used 2 different names.
Yeah, I agree. But that goes back to, like, you got 7 villains that you need to introduce. Obviously, the less important ones need to be introduced first, so they kind of build up to Gideon being the big bad. Everybody's character is very easy to identify because of the dialogue, but I think in certain ways that might work against the movie, because if you decide that you don't like the main character right away, will take a little while before he wins you back.
The care to physical comedy that was given in the writing is not something that you see often enough.
Yeah.
There's a lot of visual jokes
Yeah.
that is written into the script and is put into the movie, but there's not a word to it. But we still get that laugh.
Like the dedication to make that joke.
The pacing and timing comedically also I praise.
It's not afraid to be silly. It's not afraid to be very in and nerdy. Like there's
Different.
tons of references all throughout the script of different video games, different bands, and musical events. The whole main theme of the movie, I think I found, is denial. You have Scott Pilgrim denying that anything is his fault.
Takes actions upon himself.
Chow, who is his first love interest, who, after Scott dumps her, spends the whole movie obsessing over winning him back because she's in denial that she's sort of like good enough to live without him. Ramona denying
All of her past.
yeah, just her
just
past
trying
in
to run away.
general, just everything about it, like this, that she can move beyond it without having to face it. On a lesser note, you have Todd, who is the third Evil X, denying that him cheating his vegan diet is actually happening, which is what ultimately leads to his demise.
No
So
more
I think-
vegan powers.
I think
Gerardo's a
that
vegan. Milk and eggs, bitch.
I think that denial being such a strong theme in this movie really helps bring it full circle, because it kind of like you have every aspect of it explored in the characters in this movie.
Yeah. For this one, I'm gonna have to give it a 7. I think
I agree. 7.
7 seems like a good number for me.
I put 7 for screenplay as well. 7's across the board.
So that leads us into our next category: acting.
Every line, even if it's silly, is delivered with like such gusto and like vigor that like it'll make you chuckle. Acting also obviously includes stunts, and like there are several fight scenes where you can see Scott's or Michael Cera's face clearly, and you're like, okay, he actually just did those moves right there.
You could really make a creative argument that all of these characters are people within a video game world. They're behaving differently than people would behave.
Right.
Things are over
Right.
the top, and things are sort of less dimensional in some ways.
If I would have to offer a counterpoint, I would just say that the emotional scenes weigh well with me because I know the characters are shallow. Like Scott, even though he's sad to a degree to break up with Knives, he gets over it immediately because he has the girl of his dreams in his corner. Knives, even though she's super angry and heartbroken because Scott dumped her, her first thought is to imitate the girl he likes and then start talking to one of his best friends to get him back. It's all things that I think a lot of people have lived through, whether or not they saw it or they, experienced it personally. So, like, everything works out in the end, but it's struggles that I think a lot of people can relate with.
The evil X's, they were supposed to be, very simple and evil, and they kind of did that. I'm going to give this an 8 for acting. They were pretty good with how they performed it, so a little over the top, but generally pretty good, so better than the writing.
I'm going to go with a 9. I think that just the sheer commitment across the board to the character and to what needs to be done, no matter how ridiculous it is or no matter how serious it is at times. The fact that the actors can play such a silly part only to have an emotional scene come up next and give it with just as much impact really sticks with me. So I'm going to go with a 9.
Dude, I'm going to say 6, and that might hurt. I want to ask you about the emotional thing. So, for me, part of why I say 6 is because this, clearly it's a lot of fun. I would have loved to have been in this movie.
Any part's fun in this movie.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. When it is over the top, and some of those actions and moments are easier to get into because it's easier to play up than to play things down. I don't see a lot of moments where we pull away from the humor and we just get into, like, dangerous,
Serious,
dramatic feeling.
Right.
And, like, that's not necessarily bad because it sticks with the humor. But I don't know that there's a lot of we go away from laughing and we go just into feeling.
The over-the-topness of the script really helps accentuate the acting in this movie.
Now we're at score. So they didn't use a lot of the original score. But you were talking how
I think we could call it an original soundtrack.
Beck, the artist, wrote the music for this movie.
Okay, so...
including the instrumental bits in between.
So they are original songs, then, for the movie?
Yeah, made for the movie.
Yeah, that's what
I wasn't sure about
there
that.
are a few covers in there. There's,
the one sung by Clash of Demon Head.
Yeah, it's called Black Sheep. I don't know the name of the original band, I'm sorry. Beck actually taught the cast members how to play the instruments that they play in the movie, so when they're playing on screen, they really are playing those songs.
That's impressive. That's another layer.
Mm-hmm.
Another layer I like.
Yeah, I really dug all the music, too. Like, every single song was just a bop, honestly.
The Sex Bomb sound is very reminiscent of that garage punk,
White Stripes.
alternative, like, just very dirty, underground
Rough.
rock music.
Yeah.
Rough and raw.
Yeah. They're not popular at all, actually. When they start off, the band often talks about how much they suck and if they should even continue, but throughout the movie you see them grow and come up with these more complicated songs.
The battle with the Kadianagi twins and the bass battle.
That was cool, yeah.
Those are sweet sequences.
Although that would suck to go see that live. I don't know why anyone would ever go see that.
Amp versus Amp, yeah.
Sounds like an awful idea, but...
It's no new idea to have like two different identities within a musical composition competing, but that it becomes a part of our story also.
Right.
That's well
That's
put
how
together.
they feed them, is through the battle of the bands.
Yeah.
So.
You see a visual representation of the music literally battling each other, and like you were saying, the Kadianagi twins are these two Chinese dragons, and then Sex Bomb has this very like Canadian Yeti looking thing, and that was a cool moment.
Oh hell yeah, that was very fitting.
I'd say for score, I'm gonna give this one a 9 because this whole movie I was just bopping to it. So
I agree.
You know.
I'm not gonna meet you guys at 9. I'm gonna say 8, but it's a great music behind all this.
So now sound editing.
A lot of the sounds in the movie are from real video games, like the Zelda tune plays near the beginning. The KO is from
Street Fighter. I'm pretty sure.
Arcade fighting game. Just all the different sounds. The punching sounds is another thing that I always take for granted because they're literally happening all the time. But
right.
like the different strikes had different weights and different sounds to them because of this nature of the blow, whether it was just a jab or like a full on roundhouse kick. There was a lot of very good attention to what sound needed to be played when.
When we see someone defeated and like we hear a strike, but then there's also the jingle of the change coming out of them.
Falling on the ground. Yeah.
Every time.
One thing that I liked was when Lucas Lee comes out of the trailer and it plays the Universal Studios theme, and he cracks his neck to the bum bum. So yeah, there was a lot of good editing for the sound. I'm gonna have to give this one an 8.
For sound effects on this one, I'm actually gonna say 10.
You think that was the best it could be?
I can't think of anything better. There's not a moment where you're not hearing what's happening.
That's a good point.
And all of these sounds are, like he said, they're authentic.
And they fit, like...
We're painting a video game world, and sonically, we are immersed in a video game world.
It's true.
And it's every second of the whole movie, and it's, cinematic, like, apprehension engine. All of that.
I'll switch to a 9.
You gonna change?
Yeah.
It's now or never.
We sold Adam a bit.
Yeah. You've got a good point, though. I thought about even the scene where he holds up the picture of Ramona's hair and it just makes that really quick whoosh, and
that's Ramona Flowers.
Every beat that it decides to take audio-wise there's never like a dull moment, never a time where you're like, I wish the soundtrack would back off, or I wish there wasn't as much going on. It really helps keep you engaged.
We're going into art and design now. So they didn't really... I feel like they played it safe with this a bit.
Oh, I disagree.
A lot of the costumes didn't seem... They seemed real.
Yeah.
Very real. Not saying that wasn't bad. That was bad, but I'm saying it wasn't video game-esque.
The main cast, I could see your point on that. Everyone looks like how I think they would look, though. Where they really shine with the costuming and art design is the villains in general.
I was gonna say
each villain is uniquely dressed and like has a unique style. Matthew Patel, the pirate. You got Lucas Lee as a skater. Todd Ingram is this like rock star.
Their corresponding numbers are usually incorporated somewhere in like the scenes or on their costuming. Or,
like Todd wears the 3 on his shirt. That's an obvious one.
Lucas Lee's got a
Lucas Lee has a 2 tattoo, but it's only in that scene where he's watching him in that movie.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Which is very cool. That's a very neat little time to do that. Matthew Patel poses with like his arm up with holding the 1.
The art and design, it goes outside of the characters into the scenery too.
Yes.
You see X's everywhere in this movie.
Yeah.
All over the place, and they're deliberate, man.
I like the use of the snow. It was just perfect setting for it.
Yeah. That's another thing too. Like
the design. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It goes like over the top a lot, and you feel like you're in a video game world, but also a lot of the shots are just rural Canada, and it feels like you're in this small little town. Well, it's Toronto, but a small part of Toronto.
Yeah, it's a smaller part of Toronto,
and
quieter boroughs.
Yeah, and it does feel contained when it needs to be.
I'm gonna go ahead and give this a 7.
I will go with an 8, I suppose. I don't know what else to write.
I'm gonna say 8 as well for art and design.
All right, cinematography. They got a lot of cool shots in this one.
I can't stress enough how much I love the cinematography in this movie. The choreography for the fight scenes are like literally some of the best I've ever seen. It's not just like punch, punch, dodge, punch, punch, dodge. You have all kinds of different blows from different heights and angles, flips, spins, ridiculous things that only work in a movie like this. Like if you compare it to something like an old kung fu movie like Fists of Fury or something like that, that is what it reminds me of.
For me, some of my happiest moments with the cinematography was outside of the fighting, in moments where Scott is spacing out.
Yeah.
They use the darkness very well, too, in backdrops.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They do. They use a lot of negative space and a lot of darkness very well because they have the foreknowledge that, we're going to be putting graphics in this part of the screen, or we're going to be, doing something with an effect here, so we have to plan ahead with how we're going to shoot that shot, and it really stands out to me.
I like the overhead view of the fight scenes. I think that makes it very more real because it's not like jump cuts to like hitting and punching. You can see every punch land, and it's very visible, which also I just learned from Paul, I think it was, that they actually use powder on all of the actors so you can see all the hits, little poofs of dirt and whatnot.
The dust coming off them,
Yeah, it's an old trick, I guess, in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. So
came from Chinese cinema, I think.
But they had so many. We could talk all day, I feel, about the cinematography, but I'm gonna give this a 9, I think, because it was near perfect.
I'm gonna go with a 10 myself. I think that out of all the different categories, this is
definitely the
best
one.
aspect to me. The thing that whenever I look at this movie, I look at it with a marvel instead of just like entertainment.
V for Vendetta, The Crow, all these things that come from a graphic novel background, and they find their way into something even more visual. So, for cinematography, I will say a 9. It's good job, guys.
Special effects.
The P bar is a personal favorite.
I love that. That's really funny.
It's a good touch.
One of the biggest things about this movie that makes it feel like the graphic novel or comic book series is that there are visual sound effects like thwap, plock, all that stuff constantly popping up while you're watching this fight scene that is so brilliantly shot. It makes it so alive. When you look at a comic book panel, the most interesting draw of it is that the characters are springing out of the panel. They're literally coming to life before your very eyes with these sound effects and colors and stuff. And through the special effects, they really, really help cement that feeling of being in a video game world or a comic book world, however you want to look at it.
I really like the scene where Scott just gets the two swords that come right out of his heart.
Yeah.
Scott earned the power of self-respect. Like the whole narrator voice too. Continue 10, 9, 8.
It's
feels
always
very video gamey.
very satisfying to see the villains burst into coins.
Yeah.
Like,
So much.
just the perfect ending to a great fight, whatever one.
You see the score
happens
count.
to be. Yeah.
Something happens, he's trying to decide what to do, so it makes like a spinning wheel chart and it lands like right in the middle of like,
Yeah.
I know her, I gotta go
I have to
pee.
pee on her.
I have to go pee on her.
In the bass battle with Todd, you hear the bass coming through the where he gets blown through the wall, but you see a bunch of D's separating that dun 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 dun.
And like
dun, dun, dun.
Like the
Yeah.
plastic cups flying too in that scene.
Yeah,
That was a cool choice for that.
And then when they in the Kadianagi fight, when they throw on the distortion pedal, and the distortion literally goes around the band and like throughout the instruments and stuff, visually representing sounds is a big. It helps both sides. It helps the sound because it causes you to focus on it, but it also like it's visually pleasing to look at and associate it with the sounds you're hearing.
I have a problem with giving something a perfect 10 because that means it's completely perfect in my eyes. So with that in mind, I'm going to have to give this a 9.
I understand your apprehension towards giving things 10s. I also feel the same way. However, when I think about that, it's like, well, what could I want beyond what is given? It's very difficult to represent a different medium when you're using film, but I think that this movie did that perfectly, so I will give it a 10.
Well said. Paul?
The effects is where all of this comes together for me. It accentuates the sounds and the score. It brings together the cinematography. It pairs with what they've planned with the cinematography. It brings things out in like the writing and their performances. So I say 9, but that's a strong spot there.
So that brings us to our next category, film editing.
The transition shots all the time are just beautiful. There will be times when Scott is inattentive because he's like, thinking about something, and there's a great part where he's hanging out with Knives and he's in the library or something, and she keeps saying, Scott? Scott? And then all of a sudden Steven's face comes in from the side and says, Scott! You only played one note that entire song. And then right after that he walks by the frame, and then all of a sudden they're in an alley walking to this party. Like, the transition shots keep the movie feeling
Flowing.
moving, but also they're just interesting. They're not something you see a lot of.
It's such a different style, and it's done so perfectly, like, so quick, and it's so, like, fast-paced, but yet it doesn't feel, rushed at all, and it's, like, perfect for it.
With modern movies, I think the biggest problem I have is when you're in an action scene, it's so hard to tell where they want you to be in that scene. As an audience, so much is happening, and there's so many different things that you have to focus on that the median shot length is roughly like 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not long enough for me to understand. And in this movie, they'll focus and hold on a little bit of a sequence, whether it's Lucas Lee grabbing Scott's legs, taking a big swing and throwing him up at the wall, and we watch him fly all the way into the background, hit the wall, fall down, while Lucas Lee is in the foreground going boom, like, loving it. It's scenes like that give you the
Seems very real.
the scope of like how big that hit just was, or how much that was supposed to hurt, or how much distance was traveled. Another thing with the transition shots, it's something that's not done a lot, but in this movie it's done really well, where an object will be, forward, and then the background has to change, so once the object's in front of your face long enough, that pulls away, and now you're in a new place. The use of darkness, like you said, when we fade in or fade out, it's not always just like we're fading out to a new scene. We might be fading into a character's mind, literally. to get to that new scene.
Yeah.
And that's why all of a sudden we're in a new place, is because as the character was checking out, we were checking out. And I think that's something that's really brilliantly done in this movie. There's a lot of times when you get text on screen. There are many, many movies that I find that horribly distracting.
Yup.
That doesn't bother me in this movie. There's a lot of times where it'll say the next day, or a Smashing Pumpkins reference when Scott gets sad. It says the infinite sadness. Or great part is when he's stalking Ramona right at the beginning, and it's like, and so he stalked her until she left the party.
When when I think Crash and the Boys are playing, and they're playing so loud you can't hear Steven talk.
He's just screaming.
You just hear every consecutive word he's speaking appearing next to him. Scott, why are you just standing there staring? You're freaking me out!
That's another great scene where it's they use visuals in conjunction with the sound to make the joke land really well.
Things that are very difficult to do are to pace a story and to make jokes land right. And the jokes in this are like a mile a minute sometimes. You know, it's almost every line is a new punchline.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the comedy, both like the dialogue humor and also the physical humor, are timed, and how they're presented is really, really stunningly well done. The transitions, which we've discussed, are seamless and fantastic. Well thought out, well implemented. As an editor, I'm very pleased watching like this cut together. I'll say 8. I was close to 9, but I'll say 8.
It's a tough one.
I'll do a 10. 3 10s in a row. Why not?
Man, you guys are just...
I'm generous.
Very generous.
You already gave pretty good reasons, extensive reasons.
I'm pretty harsh. I'm going to have to give this another 9. I can't give it a perfect, but the transitions were beautifully done. Overall movie. I'm looking at my paper. I'm looking at your guys' paper. Everything was above 7. Literally every single one. The only 6 was Paul from acting. So that goes to show you this is a well-built, well-structured movie. Mm-hmm. I didn't give it any perfect 10s. I see you guys did.
I will say there is no movie like this movie. And probably never will be like this movie again. I think it really speaks to the fact that, like I was saying earlier, every person that worked on this movie worked hard. And that's very ironic to me, because it's just this little comic book series, graphic novel that could have had anyone working on it. It could have been average at best so easily. But all these people came together to really make something that was memorable. Whether or not you enjoy it or not, you cannot deny that it's a memorable movie.
It stands out from the others, that's for sure.
I think that's really the beauty of film, is when you get hundreds and hundreds of people that come together and they want to see something succeed like how this succeeds. And it can have its drawbacks and stuff, but like I said, there isn't a movie like this movie. I would consider it as unique as like some dramas I've seen, or some, horror films I've seen even. It's just, it really stands on its own feet, being reminiscent of a lot of things you've seen, but completely different at the same time.
I think the highest compliment you can give a movie is saying that this will inspire other filmmakers in other movies, and I feel like this movie will definitely inspire many more filmmakers to come. Mm-hmm. So, I want to hear what you guys have to say for this, because I don't know what to give this one. I'm a little indifferent of how I feel.
That's fair.
Paul just wrote 17. I was kind of right up there with you.
This is definitely, it's well above average, and for me, it's
better than good.
It's better than good.
It's better than good.
That's it.
This is a movie I would buy, so I'd say 17 is appropriate. I'm going to give that a 17 as well.
It's inspiring. It's fantastic. It's spectacular. It's got so many layers. Many layers.
Very, very layered.
I'll give it an 18. Because like I said, there are things that I can acknowledge have some weakness to them, but the point of making something is to make something that is something you're proud of and something that you feel is original. And like, I can't imagine that anyone that was in this movie or worked on it wouldn't feel that way.
Definitely a special movie.
Quite so.
So we're gonna tally up our rates here, and we'll get us an average.
Well, we've done our totaling for Scott Pilgrim, and I arrive at 82 out of 100.
I'm at 90 out of 100.
And I came to 83 of 100, so that being averaged out is 85 out of 100. So our second best review so far for a movie. It's pretty good though. Any last comments on this movie?
Go watch it.
Go watch it. Yep, it stands out by far than a lot of other movies.
If nothing else, it's a good time.
Adam's prepared a quote for us.
That's no lava-lantula. That's a goddamn gargantulantula.
Oh no.
Dude, it's power through it, my man.
Alright, fuck.
That's how she goes. You're gonna be talking to her anyway throughout this, so. Rampage! Alright, hold on, let me get another hit.
That's how you do it. You see, I get myself psyched up, and then he's like, hold on.
Hold
I
on.
need more.
Can I hit that? Because I was not ready for whatever that was.
Yeah, that's what I'm
dude.
saying. I was like, well,
God
damn, after seeing that, I need another hit.
So, like, yeah, anything from, like, 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, anything, literally.
40s, 30s, 20s, 10s,
Yep.
Just because,
Keep going.
like,
1900s, 1890s.
Before we end our session, we're going to give two shout-outs. One to Vern, our co-host.
Co-host.
Yep. And second being Adam, thank you for joining us. Our first guest for Take Two Reviews. So
thank you
Been
for
a
having me.
pleasure, sir.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Like, keeping things fresh around here, so.
Yes.
So join us next week on our next Take Two Review.
That's actually hilarious.